just waiting for your voter pamphlet and voting, it's just not quite enough for the situation that we have ourselves in the state. And I really want people to be actively involved in what's going on and understand the nuances. Civic involvement in education is what's going to fix what's going on. It's up to us. It's not up to just who we elect. It's up to us, the people, to know what's good for us and to be informed. Now on to our panelists. Senator Janine Solomon, thank you so much. She is the only chief sponsor of the measure that is here today on our forum. And so I am so grateful that you're here. She was elected to the Oregon House of Representatives in 2016 and now serves as the state senator for Senate District 15, which covers areas of Western Washington County. Beautiful area. She currently serves as the Deputy Majority Leader of the Senate, Chair of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee, take notes, and co-chair of the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Public Safety. Before becoming a legislator, Janine served as a member of the Hillsborough School Board from 2009 to 2017. Lots of work there. And for over 26 years at the same time, she's worked in, is it Vernier? Vernier Science Education and Educational Scientific Technology Company based in Beaverton. Busy woman. Representative Gamba, right next to her, represents Milwaukee, Oak Grove, Northern Clackamas County, and the Selwood, Eastmoreland, and Woodstock neighborhoods in the Oregon State House of Representatives. He also served as the mayor of Milwaukee for 8 years. And before that, as a Milwaukee city councilor, his approach to solving problems is always centered upon investing in good working relationships with his colleagues. He feels strongly that regardless of political affiliations, his experience has taught him that we achieve our best work when all voices feel heard and respected. He brings the same commitment to his job in the legislative role and works diligently to cast informed and well-considered votes on behalf of his district. Thank you, Representative. Representative Charlie Conrad. He's a 25-year public servant serving his first term representing the Oregon House District 12, which is Eastern Wayne County. He recently became interested in and became an advocate for RCV, so it'll be interesting to hear his transition to that, because he feels it will return election decisions to voters by restricting the party's ability to continue limiting our choices in who represents us. Here on the other table, Representative Ed Deal. He's in his first term as state representative for House District 17, represented East Salem through the majestic Santiam Canyon. Ed has a bachelor's and master's of science degree in mechanical engineering from Stanford University. You can still talk to him, though. He has a personality. It's awesome. He's a founder and past owner of Concept Systems, a control system integration firm that was in Albany, or is based in Albany, manufacturing clients around the world. And then we have Bill Eison here all the way from Alaska. He spearheaded the initiative petition to repeal ranked choice voting in Alaska, which was used for the first time in 2022. He's written 2 books critical of ranked choice voting and is writing a 3rd book now. He is currently working on a petition to remove electronic voting machines from Alaska's election, and his background is in finance and marketing. And finally, Miss Sarah Wolf. She's a Portland-grown community organizer, activist, and musician with a background in systems design, sustainable architecture, community organizing, and regenerative agriculture. So you may ask, why is she here? She loves working to cultivate relationships to help people come together. But she realized that empowering people through real democracy is the key to making an exponential difference on every issue that she sees. So Sarah's been working with the Equal Vote Coalition to bring star voting to Oregon and beyond since 2016, and she is now the executive director at Equal Vote. What we're going to do now is we're going to move to, we have had both sides of the panel, the proponents, as we're calling them, and the opponents, do up to a 7-minute presentation just about ranked choice voting, proponents and opponents. You guys want to go first? Okay.
Perfect. There we go. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you tonight. I look forward to this discussion. My name's Janine Solman. I do represent Western Washington County, and I was a co-sponsor of for the ranked choice voting to get on the ballot. So I'm just going to talk briefly as we're going to pass down to, I just want to mention overall, ranked choice voting addresses current system issues. It removes barriers for new voices running for office. It eliminates the spoiler effect and strategic voting, allowing voters to choose their truly preferred candidate. It encourages candidates to run on issues that voters most care about. It leads to more reflective representation. It also provides a potential for reducing the political polarization that we are feeling, not only in Oregon, but across the United States. And it is a significant step forward in addressing the dangerous increase in political polarization. The implementation and education is incredibly important. That is important in this factor. And when we talk about the ballot initiative, we're talking about a 4-year implementation process. So on the ballot, and then in 28, it would be implemented. So that provides the longest runway for education and providing voters that necessary information they need to be going into an election and understanding what ranked choice voting is. It will provide for a culturally responsive statewide voter education campaign. The bill helps ensure standardized implementation across the state. So just wanted to add very briefly too that I think this is incredibly important because for me, I know that I enjoy knocking on doors and talking to voters. Those of you that are in the room that are in an elected position, I'm sure that that's something that you enjoy as well. I think it's important for us to do that. And I believe that ranked choice voting will truly give those voters the opportunity to look at the candidates that they support, look at the candidates that share values similar to theirs, and be able to then provide, this is my first candidate of choice, second, third. If you choose and only see one candidate, that doesn't prevent you from voting for that one candidate. But this just gives opportunity for you to be able to rank those candidates so that your vote will never truly be thrown away. There will be opportunity for you to have your voice be heard in these elections. And so I would like to pass it on to Representative Gamba.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for coming out for this. I was a co-sponsor on this because I have long believed in democracy. And to me, what democracy means is that what government does reflects what the majority of the people truly want. And I don't think that necessarily happens. And I think part of the reason that doesn't happen is the system that we have for electing people right now. There are a number of things we need to change. We need to get dark money out of politics. Ideally, we would have publicly funded elections. We need to, in Oregon, I think, open the primaries so that the more than 1/3 of the people who currently are disenfranchised from the primaries would have an opportunity to vote in the primaries. Because for a lot of districts, that is the only choice, the only time you're making a true choice, because it's a very blue district or a very red district. So by the time you get to the general election, the choice is made. And then lastly is some form of ranked choice voting. I think star voting is a good idea too, but ranked choice voting was the concept that most legislators agreed with. It's the one that's been most tested around the world and in the United States. And I think it's a very good concept to allow you to vote for the candidate that you truly believe in and truly like, and then have your second and third and fourth choice depending on the election. Portland will have more than that. But it allows you to rank the people that you want to see in office in the order that you truly believe they deserve. And it can actually have an effect on elections and cause people to get elected that the sort of status quo would never allow to happen. So I think it's an important step towards a more fair and representative democracy.
Thank you. Again, my name is Charlie Conrad, and I represent House District 12, which is Eastern Lane County. And as was mentioned in the bio, I actually supported the measure on the House floor to get to the people, because something of this significance should be voted on by the people. It didn't need to be voted on by the legislature. Had we voted on ranked choice voting that day on the legislature instead of referral to the folks, to the voters, I probably would have voted no, because I did not fully understand it. And I recently came around to deciding that ranked choice voting is the way to go. And there's two levels of the conversation as I see it tonight. The first one is, do we have issues that we need to solve in our political system? Are we all happy with how it is functioning, both at the local level, the state level, and the national level? And if we're not happy with the results that we're getting from those folks that we were putting in office, what can we do to change it? And keep in mind that any changes are only opportunities. It all comes down to us as voters to take advantage of those opportunities prevented by any system changes we've made. And that is critical for me as we talk about ranked choice voting tonight, to remember it is always the voter and their responsibility, their choices, their decisions of taking advantage of opportunities or keeping things status quo. And in looking at the political system, the politics industry is very complex. So I will look at it very simplistically. We have parties, we have voters, and in the middle we have legislators, hopefully governing legislators is the phrase I use. What has happened as I see it, is the parties have moved away from what voters need. And that is leaving exhausted majority of folks that don't want to pay attention to politics. They don't want to hear it on the news. They don't want us showing up at the door, knocking on it. They graciously take our handouts and then go and recycle them. How do we get those exhausted majority of folks back engaged so that they can have their voices heard? This system, ranked choice voting, and there are a lot of different flavors, or some different variations, a number of things you can do to address some of the concerns that are helpful. But we have to decide what those concerns are and what our priorities are. So the government, for me, the way I see the government, it is a manifestation of humans, and we're fallible. We will never create anything perfect. The government is here, created by us, to manage interactions between us. And therefore, it's going to be imperfect. There are always going to be things that we have to keep in mind and things that we have to look at. But one of the things, a couple polls that I think are pretty instructive with the way that our political system has evolved over the last 30 years, and it's been decades in the making, there is no single decision that we will make in November that will change 30 years of the movement between the disconnect between parties and voters. But a couple quick poll numbers. According to a 2017 Pew survey poll, the median Republican is now more conservative than 97% of Democrats, up from 64% just in since 1994. And the median Democrat is more liberal than 95% of Republicans, up from 70% in 1994. We have sorted ourselves to the extremes of the party. And many of those folks are energized. They get the airwaves. And again, we get that exhausted majority that are just, I'm done. I'm going to maybe do my civic duty because I appreciate it, but I'm going to tune out of politics the best I can. One of the other polls that I want to cite is again from Pew 2022. And I'm quoting this. In 2016, about half of Republicans, 47%, and slightly more than a third of Democrats, 35%, said that those in the other party were a lot or somewhat more immoral than other Americans. Today, 72% of Republicans regard Democrats as more immoral, and 63% of Democrats say the same about Republicans. We're not talking about policies. This is not policy identity anymore. This is not policy discussions. Our system that we have now has made it personal. Not personal so that we disagree on, A or B as the right solution to the problem that we agree is a problem. It's personal. I don't like you because you don't agree with me. That is where we're at. And if we want to make changes, we need to make those system changes and take advantage of those opportunities. But where we're at today, it's not a mystery. A couple more quotes from me, if you'll bear with me for a second. I love constitutional history. So both Hamilton and Madison in Federalist Papers 9 and 10 talk about factions. The other person that also talked about factions in his farewell address, President George Washington. So a few quotes from his farewell address. One of the expedients of party, and this again, written 18th century English, one of the expedients of party to acquire influence within particular districts is to misrepresent the opinions and aims of other districts. Again, we get back to the immoral statistics that I just talked about. They serve to organize faction, to give it artificial and extraordinary force, to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of the party. The party, just like we are, we're all self-interested. Parties are manifestations of us and the factions we form. They're going to be self-interested. They are self-interested. That is why they have become disconnected from voters. We need to pull the parties back. I'm not anti-party. I want functioning parties. I want people to control who's going to be in the office. I want legislators to answer to the people and not to the parties. That is where I want to go. One final quote from Mr. President Washington. Again, talking about parties, factions. They are likely, in the course of time and things, to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. Again, where we're at today is not a mystery. People have been talking about this for centuries because it's basic human nature. And if we want to manage our interactions better, if we want to bring it back so that exhausted majority can actually be involved, be engaged, and we can spend time as legislators talking about the solutions to many challenges we have, we're not always going to agree, but we need people at the table that can have rational discussion, collaborate, compromise, and cooperate to reach those decisions so that people benefit. Ranked choice voting does this. We'll have a lot of time to talk about the mechanics of ranked choice voting. So I look forward to that. But again, this is exactly what I was hopeful for about 2.5 years ago, 18 months ago, when we voted on the floor to have these conversations and to get the information out there so people can make an informed choice about what they want. So I thank you.
First off, thank you all for being here. It shows this is an important issue, and the fact that you're here, spending your evening listening to us, tells me that you take this seriously. You take our republic seriously, and you take Oregon citizenship seriously. So thank you. I'm not going to say that our current system is perfect. It's not. But I will say that whatever we do to change it, we better make it better and not worse. And I'll say, here's what I look for in any election system. Number one, it's got to be easy to vote. I believe we have to honor the one person, one vote principle. It's got to be accessible to every voter, regardless of age. Well, you got to be old enough to vote. Race, income, disability, or education. Our elections have to be secure, and I believe they need to be controlled locally. We need a system that's easy to count, transparent, and easy to audit. It needs to be cost effective, and it needs to yield predictable, timely, and understandable results. I think any election reform we consider must live up to the hype and must not introduce more problems than we're trying to solve. And ranked choice voting, as envisioned with Measure 117, does none of these things. It does not live up to the hype. It does not lead always to a majority vote, as you and I think of what a majority vote would be. It does not eliminate the spoiler effect. It complicates the voting process. It disenfranchises lots of voters, low-income voters, seniors, and minorities in the process. It leads to unpredictable and unintended election results. It reduces the transparency and complicates the tally and tabulation process. It takes local control away from our counties and centralizing tabulation at the state level. It increases the cost of our elections. And I believe it violates the one person, one party rule. So voters in Oregon this year are being asked to make a drastic change to how we vote and how we tabulate results. And before heading down this path, we need to be absolutely sure that we're making things better and not worse. We should have indisputable, solid evidence that RCV meets the goals: transparency, ease of use, cost effectiveness, accessibility, and predictability. That evidence does not exist. And even if you're a proponent of election reform, ranked choice voting is not the answer. And I want to emphasize one thing here. This is not a partisan issue. It went through the House pretty much on partisan lines. This is not a partisan issue. Washington, D.C. Democrat Party is opposed to ranked choice voting. Numerous NAACP chapters are opposed to ranked choice voting. Sarah, my friend Sarah here tonight, I don't think we agree on anything. But we agree on two things. Our current system isn't perfect, and ranked choice voting is not the fix. Thank you.
So I'm Sarah Wolf. I'm the executive director of the Equal Vote Coalition, and we're a national but Oregon-based nonprofit that works on fighting for true equality in the vote itself. So as we change and grow as a country, keeping the foundation of our democracy strong is critical. And my vote should be just as powerful as your vote, no matter who I am, where I am, how many candidates are on my side, what party I affiliate with, or any other factor. So that's the lens that we're bringing to the table here. I'm a peer-reviewed author on this subject. I'm not a politician. And this is a topic that really gripped my attention first around 12 years ago. I met a canvasser for ranked choice voting, and they were like, there's this amazing thing. You've heard of the Nader effect, where the majority can end up divided and conquered. You have to vote lesser evil to avoid splitting the vote. And this is what leads to two-party domination. This is what led to Nader splitting the vote and electing George Bush. It's the same thing that happened on the Republican side with Ross Perot. So it's cost both major parties the presidency. But it happens all the time in competitive elections at the local level and at every single level of politics. It's completely fixable with voting reform. And I was like, this is amazing. I've been shattered by this problem in our country since I first voted. The idea that if you vote your conscience, that it's not safe to vote your conscience. It's like, if we can't actually vote our conscience, is it even a democracy? And so I became a huge ranked choice voting advocate for years. And the reasons were what I had learned that first day. I want it to be safe to vote my conscience. I want to be sure that my vote won't be wasted if my favorite can't win. And I want to eliminate vote splitting and spoiler effect to elect more representative candidates to help unify our country. And it wasn't until I volunteered for my first ranked choice voting Oregon meeting and showed up in person that I got facts checked. And I didn't take kindly to that. I'm a wonky person. I love policy. I had read everything from Fair Vote, the main lobbyist organization behind ranked choice voting. And they were like, well, it's more safe to vote your conscience, but voting for your first choice can actually backfire, just like the current system. Ranked choice is counted like a series of traditional elections, so it has all the same problems, but it does mitigate them somewhat. And I was like, that's not true. Let me volunteer for the research committee. And they were like, also, you have to qualify the claim that it doesn't waste your vote. With ranked choice voting, there's exhausted ballots. And Representative Conrad brought up exhausted people, but ranked choice voting can actually exhaust ballots and spoil ballots and waste ballots in a number of new ways that don't exist with the current system. And then third, I started looking at studies measuring, how accurate are these voting methods? How often do they really elect the most representative candidate? And the studies were unanimous, no matter who did them, how old they were, through tons of election science, that our current system is by far the least accurate voting method out there. It fails anytime there's more than two candidates or two parties. Somebody can have 1% of the vote and throw the election to the other side. And that's a huge problem. But ranked choice voting is just next up the ladder. And there are dozens of voting methods that have been invented hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, a few years ago. All other alternative voting methods pretty much outperform ranked choice voting as it's being proposed. So this is a really important issue. We owe it to voters to get this right. We can't afford to tell people what they want to hear. The risk of backlash, if we ram through something that is essentially a burnt pancake, it might take more than one try to get this policy right. And we can't ignore the election science community. So that's the voice I'll try and bring today.
Thank you very much. My name is Philip Bison. So I actually wrote the election law unilaterally in my living room in Alaska. No one else helped me. I did it. I repealed ranked choice voting. It will be on the ballot in November. And so I just want to cover a couple things in particular from their side. I heard lots of emotions. I heard lots of very little facts, very little data. Okay, so the data does not back up their claims in any way, shape, or form. And so we're just going to go line by line here real quick. So spoiler candidates. In Alaska, we had a spoiler candidate. Her name was Sarah Palin in 2022. The most preferred candidate was Nick Begich. He should have won the election. And this is Harvard data. Data is at the University of Harvard. Okay, the main proponent that pushes ranked choice voting is Fair Vote. They go out and they accumulate this data and they make it available to people. And they prove in the data that Nick Begich was the most preferred candidate. And yet he lost the election. Why? By majority of the population in the state of Alaska, the most preferred candidate lost because of ranked choice voting. That happened. That's real. It's not theory. It's not emotions. It's real. Okay. In Vermont, that also happened. Okay. MIT study, she talked about stability, making elections more civil. Of course, we all want that. But guess what? Ranked choice voting doesn't do that. And according to MIT, again, research study. Okay. So voter education, we talked about that. And we're saying, okay, well, we can fix this. We can educate people in Oregon about ranked choice voting. No, we can't. In Australia, it's been used for 100 years. Okay. People do understand ranked choice voting there, but they're taught at second and third grade levels all the way up till they're adults on how to use ranked choice voting. So if you think you can teach a 70, 80-year-old person how to use ranked choice voting when they've never used that system before, then I have, real estate in oceanfront real estate Arizona to tell you. It's not possible. You can't. I tried. I first at one point in time thought that you could legitimately teach people about this system. I don't believe that anymore. I don't. Voter education, and you cannot do that. So majority, we're talking about majority votes, people getting majority. We can't do that either because exhausted ballots. So Lisa Murkowski and Mary Poltola both claim they got a majority of votes. Okay. That majority, an absolute majority, is an actual election term that has to do with election science. And it says that you got 51% or a majority of the total votes cast. Key word there, total votes cast. When you exhaust ballots, you no longer get a majority of the votes, total votes cast. You have now taken votes from the denominator of the election and thrown them out of the election. And when you do that, You knew you were not getting a majority. So the language majority is wrong. You cannot claim a majority when you're not actually getting a majority. It's just false advertising. It's entirely false advertising. RCV is funded by the darkest money in politics. Like Arabella Advisors, $6.5 billion since 2016. $1.6 billion a year. A year they raise. They raise more money than the RNC and the DNC combined. And you know who's funding ranked choice voting in nearly every state in the country? Arabella Advisors through their 1630 fund and 500 plus nonprofits that they have that they funnel money through. And that money's not coming to help. It's not Democrat money. It's not Republican money. This is elitist. These are millionaire, billionaire people that believe that they know better than you do on how to vote. And they want you to vote how they want you to vote because you're stupid. That's the reality of it. And that's what's happening in Alaska. I beat them in the Supreme Court of Alaska. Okay, they tried to throw my ballot off. I beat them. You know what they did in 1 week? They raised $4.5 million in a week, all from out of state. Okay, I know this better than anybody in this room know this topic. Okay, I've literally written 2 books on it. So here in Oregon, you guys have an even weirder thing. You have multiple voting systems. You have ES&S and all kinds of different voting systems. So how do you reconcile those things? In Alaska, we all use Dominion. It's very easy because it's just baked in software. I know how much the Dominion software costs for ranked choice voting because I've done the research. No one in this room knows this. I do. So I'm telling you, like, it's not an easy, just like snap of finger transition. It's not like that. And again, the education piece. The people have to be educated. The individual voters have to be educated on this. And so you can't do that in a short period of time. It takes years. It could take decades. It could take 20, 30 years. You may need to go back to 2nd and 3rd grade and educate every single person in every single grade to learn how ranked choice voting actually works. When you go through school, you guys are taught plurality voting. So we may have to go back and teach people in Oregon schools how to use ranked choice voting if you want to implement this correctly. So that's the reality. So upwards of 30% of people vote for just one person in the ballots. Okay. That's important. They took way more than 3 minutes. That's not okay. I'm not going to let them get away with talking. I know, but I still talk for more than 3 minutes. So I get more than 3.
We are fair women, Philip, but we won't have you talking about a minute. We're good. They're good. You're good. Go
okay, good deal. So upwards of 30% of people vote for just one person. Okay, so that's an important factor because if people only vote for one person, unlike start voting over here, you have the risk of having your vote thrown out of the election. And we did not cover exhausted. We talked about exhausted voters a lot, but we did not talk about exhausted ballots enough. And that, I guarantee everyone in this room, if I went line by line, table by table, you could not tell me what an exhausted ballot is. You could not tell me how to exhaust a ballot. You might be able to tell me one way, but you're not going to tell me all 5 ways to do it. And most people won't. You know how I know that? Because I've been in interviews with Politico, and they can't answer that question. So that's how I know that everyone in this room can't answer that question. So 1 in 4 Oakland voters in poor minority communities had their votes thrown out of the election in 2022. 1 in 4 in poor minority communities. So do we care about our poor minority communities or do we not? Do we truly care about them or are we trying to override them by implementing systems that ultimately hurt them and then tell them they're stupid because they don't understand it? Princeton study. Okay, Princeton. So people are smarter than Princeton University. Okay, so Princeton University, 1 in 8 rural Alaska Natives had their votes thrown out of the election in 2022 due to ballot errors. 1 in 8. Okay, again, Princeton University. So in San Francisco University, they proving that Latinos, elderly, and Pacific Islanders only vote for one person predominantly. Okay, so now we have a demographic issue potentially. Again, star voting doesn't have this issue. Is it one person? You only vote for one person. There's no risk. But if you vote for just one person and you're being told, right, everyone on that side of the table, that it's totally cool, you vote for just one person and you do, and then your vote's thrown out, and then Princeton turns around and proves that I'm right, you're hurting your minority communities while telling them it's okay to do what you're telling them to do. And telling them this system's great, it's fantastic, it's going to fix everything. But in reality, it hurts them. And it's your fault. I'm just saying. So last thing, Brett Conrad talked about voters being exhausted. So again, exhausted ballots, an important factor. It is baked into ranked choice voting. It's not baked into star voting. I like star voting. I don't have an issue with star voting. I have an issue with ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is also not new, and it's not since the 1800s. It's been around since 1299. So Copeland's method was originally a ranked choice voting system. So 1299. It's been in place in Australia for 100 years. It's been repealed in the United States 85 times. It's not new. They call it a whole bunch of different names. Instant runoff voting and STV, single transferable vote, lots of other things, but it's not new. Okay, I know. Last bit. Representative Gaba
We're
said,
going to get to several of these things.
I just want to cover it all because these things were brought up in the presentation.
Finish your sentence,
I will.
please,
Okay.
or the redhead is going to turn into a redhead.
Okay. So, Representative Gaba said open primaries, and so one of the key things to that is that in Alaska right now, it's happening right now. We have a Democrat that went on the ballot who's actually incarcerated in New York. He's actually in prison. He's on our ballot in the general election. That is one of the biggest concerns I have with pushing open primaries and ranked choice voting is that allows things like that to take place. And it's so bad that the DC Democrat or the Democratic Party of Alaska sued to kick another Democrat off the ballot. So if this system's so great and the Democrats really like it so much, why are they suing to kick other Democrats off the ballot in Alaska?
Good point.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to know from this panel, since one of these questions that's coming up for me is what would cause a vote to not be counted or eliminated in Oregon?
Currently, or
And we're going to do
Currently or with
the system, right? That if this is voted in, what would cause a vote to not be counted or eliminated? And then in this part, we're going to do this and we get to decide. We're going to do 2 minutes and we are going to time people. And then if it's sort of like, you know what, take another minute because we want you to get through that. Let's just try to do it that way. Okay. And this was supposed to be a longer format and I don't regret any of you giving us the full, I think that was great what you did. So thank you guys. But now we're going to try to keep it in a couple minutes. Okay.
Appreciate that. So to begin with, I disagree with everything that Phil just said. Just so you know, there is opposing views, and I look forward to these questions so we can actually get all those opposing points out there because I disagree with everything. So basic fundamentals, basically this is a question of how does ranked choice voting? And we'll take right now we have plurality voting, right? And we have the closed primaries. You have 2 people on the ballot, an R&D. Maybe you get lucky and you get an I or some other minority party out there. But you have one, circle a dot, it moves on. Ranked choice voting will only kick in if you have 3 people on, at least 3 people on that vote, right? And it is incredibly simple. Imagine 3 people. You have 3 names. 1, 2, 3. You have choices. 1, 2, 3. Who's your top choice? Circle. Who's your second choice? Circle. Third choice? Circle. That's a Scantron. Those of us of a certain age, we know how to circle in Scantrons. We're good with that. Computers know how to read Scantrons. We're all good. Not that complex. So whoever in the first round, it has passed several court cases that has shown that the 1 person, 1 vote does not violate that 1 person, 1 vote clause. Several court cases have said, nope, it's good to go. So the very first tabulation, the first round, is whoever gets the fewest votes, they get eliminated. Their second choice vote then gets reallocated to one of the other 2 votes. That is how it goes. So you get an elimination. One of your second choice goes to one of the other 2 votes. Only 2 people left. Somebody's going to have 50% plus 1 unless it's exactly 50-50 tie. And then that person is the winner. It's very simple. If you have 4 folks, right? Who's ever bottom, their second choice gets rolled up. Who's ever at the bottom again, they get eliminated. It gets rolled on up. So it's not that complex. It is very easy to teach. I'm sure a 78-year-old could easily learn how to fill in 9 little circles or 3 little circles in a 3x3 square. Okay. And then so to answer the question, and there are a couple of different flavors of this, Maine does it a certain way, other ones do a certain way as well. But if you don't fill in a circle, then sometimes you'll get an exhausted ballot. If you only fill in somebody, 1 person for number 3, you've left your first choice and your second choice open. you're going to have an exhausted ballot because they can't assume who do you think is number one. The way that Maine does it, if you fill in number one, it's number one. You can skip. And then if you have number three, so you fill in one, you don't fill in two, you fill in three. Maine will actually roll your three up to that upper spot, assuming that that is it. If you miss in Maine, if you miss 2 lines in a row, then you get an exhausted ballot. The same thing as with now, you have undervotes and you have overvotes. If you have, you know, an overvote is if you circle in 2 names. So if you have 2 people and you color in both those circles, that's an overvote. Your ballot gets discounted now as it is. That's the same thing with ranked choice voting. An undervote is when your vote doesn't count. If you have a choice, I mean, a lot of us for, you know, who you're going to vote for Supreme Court justice, a lot of people leave the justices and those other, you know, down ballot races empty. That's an undervote. You didn't vote for something. That happens with ranked choice voting as well. So the things that we currently have also carry over to ranked choice voting.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Would you guys like to answer this question on your side, which is what would cause a vote to not be counted or eliminated? And I'm holding you to 2 minutes and I don't care if it's not fair.
So the basic overview that Charlie gave about how ranked choice voting works is basically correct. But the thing to remember is there's a lot of ways to make an error on your ranked choice voting ballot. And that is why when we say voters are being disenfranchised, the data shows us that. He mentioned some. In Minnesota, precinct by precinct, lower income precincts were like 10 times more likely to make errors and not have their ballots counted. So if you rank 2 people as first, your ballot's voted. If you skip 2 rankings, your ballot will not be counted. But another significant thing here is as you go down through the ranks, okay, if you only ranked 1 person and and there's an elimination and they go to round 2, and then they tally up the next round of votes, your vote is not being tallied anymore if your candidate was eliminated. So in effect, it's like having a runoff election where you were not given a ballot. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. And what we see, like in New York City, when that mayoral election reached its final round, 15% of the voters, that's 140,000 voters, did not participate in that last round. Their ballots were exhausted due to errors. Maybe they didn't fill it out all the rounds. So to me, when I look at that, there was a runoff election with Joe and Mike, and I didn't get a voice. If that was one of my ballots, I didn't get a chance to vote to see who I liked, Joe or Mike. That's what the concern is with this. And when they say it's a majority, you always result in a majority. It's a majority of the votes of the ballots that are left. Those 15%, that 140,000 ballots, aren't counted when they're calculating the majority.
Okay. Works, David. Thank you.
So a lot of points.
Okay, hold on. This is audience participation. Who wants to do a rebuttal versus go to the next question? Raise your hand if you want a rebuttal.
Next question. Next question.
All right. I'm trying to involve. Yeah? All right. Listen, man, when Julie asked me to sit here and help moderate, I was like, this is not going to be traditional. Hold on a second.
Both of you mentioned, both sides mentioned dark money. And so Representative Gamba, Philip Eison said that there's a lot of dark money involved here. Do you want to answer that? Can you tell us, where did the funding come for this measure?
There hasn't.
So this was put on the ballot by legislature. So there was no campaign to get this on the ballot, like there was, say, with Measure 110 or something like that. This was put on the ballot by the legislature. So if that's your question, there was no dark money involved in putting this on the ballot.
And how did the legislature come together to decide as a separate body who was talking to the legislature about this?
Their vote.
Like, was there a lobbying or?
I was not personally lobbied. I've been a proponent for ranked choice and star voting for years.
Okay.
And I know the speaker was heavily involved in this, and he has also been a big proponent for ranked choice voting for a long time. So as far as I know, there was no major lobbying effort.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
And again, the speaker was very much involved because, as you know, ranked choice voting is taking place in Benton County. He was involved in working that success for Benton County. I wasn't lobbied, so to speak. I just believe in the process of the freedom of choice and understanding that when there is more than 2 candidates on there, that people then can have that ability to have their voice counted in a way that isn't just this or this, that there is that process, as Charlie explained.
Thank you.
So on that, one of the first things when I was getting involved and I wanted to get a ballot measure on the ballot, or maybe it'd be ranked choice voting, maybe it'd be whichever voting method our research committee thought was the best fit. Ultimately, we picked star voting. But and our Portland ranked choice voting chapter voted by almost a super majority to go with star voting. But Fair Vote told our chapter that, hey, if we go with ranked choice voting, we'll fund your campaign. So that was the first kind of wake up call to me of how much money was in this. We were planning on fundraising and nickel and diming it. And that's exactly what we did. We had a campaign for star voting in Eugene, and over $130,000 was spent in out of town, out of state money organized by Washington lobbyists, who's Fair Vote lobbyists, specifically to oppose star voting. But that wasn't the first time. The ranked choice lobby has also opposed approval voting, which is another alternative voting method. When citizens petitioned and got on the ballot for Seattle, they came in with a ton of dark money at the 11th hour and got ranked choice on the ballot, did a smear campaign to muddy the waters. Both of them almost failed, but ranked choice voting barely passed. And the way that they operate is interesting. With ranked choice voting, what you see is kind of a shell game where there are dozens of organizations that are lobbying for ranked choice voting with cookie cutter talking points, cookie cutter playbook, all around the country. So it's hard to trace, but there is money that is traceable. For example, Nevada, to pass ranked choice voting, they had a 2-vote process. Just for the first vote, we spent $23 million in out-of-state money. And one more point. Sorry to do this. We did look into the ranked choice voting bill in the legislature, and what we confirmed is that almost every legislator in Oregon who voted yes on ranked choice voting received donations from the ranked choice voting lobby. A smaller donation and then a larger donation again after the voting.
No, I voted yes. I received nothing.
We can send you the spreadsheet for the thing, which is got that box checked. There's a handful of exceptions.
So
And I believe Charlie Conrad was one of those exceptions. I think Mark Gavin might have been one of those exceptions too. But there were donations to almost every.
Okay. So let the record show that they're all saying absolutely not, and I am going to pull it. Fair? Okay. Yeah. Well, they're involved too. Y'all riled up?
You had multiple people over there answer about dark money. The question was directly related to my point about dark money. So I would love to discuss this a little further.
Okay, so please hold for one moment. The question that I think is, where's the question I was asking, Julie?
You asked about dark money. Specifically, Julie asked about it. She said that.
You told them.
Dark money.
I don't think, I think that you made your point very clear about the billions of dollars that are going
She had
through.
a chance to point out exactly where it's coming from, which I can't. So I think that's valuable.
Can you do it in 30 seconds? Okay.
So Fair Vote, who is an organization that promotes ranked choice voting nationally, is funded by Laura and John Arnold Foundation, Indar Network, Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros. This is directly from influencewatch.org, so you guys can look this up yourselves. So Jennifer and Jonathan Allen Soros Foundation, Democracy Fund, Tides Foundation, William and Laura Hewitt Foundation, Joyce Foundation, John and D. Catherine MacArthur Foundation, Public Welfare, Soros Fund Charitable Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, Rockefeller Brothers, and Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. This is who's funding these organizations. And again, 500 plus nonprofits. On top of all this, there's a gentleman named Hans-Jörg Weiss, who lives in Wyoming, who is not a U.S. citizen. And he's donated $500 million to 1630 Fund, which is connected to the Arabella Advisors Network. And again, not a U.S. citizen. And he has donated $240 million to ballot initiatives across the country. And on top of this, they're in Wisconsin. Legislators over here trying to say they don't have any connections. Well, Dan Rayfield received 4 donations from 4 Soros family members, and he was the main guy that promoted ranked choice voting here in Oregon. So trying to say that there's no connection is just absolutely not true.
Thank you.
Four-star.
Well, what?
I'd like to specifically with this measure, it hasn't been discussed, the funding. So if you go to 4-star
Yes.
right now, the Yes on 117 PAC is funded entirely by one C4 called Oregon Ranked Choice Voting. Not entirely, but the vast majority, Oregon Ranked Choice Voting. Oregon Ranked Choice Voting is a C4. We cannot see who's funding that. The money's coming to a C4 and then being sent to the PAC. So I would ask if, in the spirit of transparency, will the proponents share who's providing money for that C4?
I have no idea. As what I imagine, none of us have any idea about any of this.
Is it Lamoda?
Any political action.
You guys know, but I know who does, and I can't listen to it, so I have.
Just one observation. Again, this is politics. Everything is funded by somebody somewhere at some point in time. Even your event here is privately funded. It's not through a PAC. Our system, we do have dark money.
I would like PAC money, please.
we do have super PACs, and I'm pretty sure every single legislator up here has their own PAC to fund their campaign. This is how it happens. The biggest question, I'm not getting paid by anybody. As I said, I'm here because I support ranked choice voting. That is why we're here. Ranked choice voting is outlined in the measure. Look at it. If it meets your criteria for something that you want to go to, vote for it. The red herring is everything. I can't counter everything Phil said because I don't know. I don't care. I'm looking at the words on the page. Those are what matters to me because I make up my own mind. I can read words and I can understand the concepts involved. And if it is a structure and a system that meets my criteria for a voting system that is fair and meets all of my criteria, I'm going to vote for it.
Okay, Representative Conrad, here's the question. This is for the proponents, and then I'm going to ask the other side. Oregon, okay, so I'd like to know how much this is going to cost and where the money's coming from to implement ranked choice voting.
It's going to be a state budget.
State election.
Yeah.
As
As anything, and whether it's a budgeted line item or however it goes through, it'll be that way. The numbers that we have, I think Alaska was like 3 million to implement, and that includes training, education, all those kind of things. There's another, I forget which state it was 4 million. And then I think the numbers that I got from Maine, 441,000.
Is it cheaper, do you think, once it's implemented, it gets going?
So there are a couple different things to look at, and then I'll turn it over because I've had the microphone a lot tonight, so my apologies. It's the cost to implement, but what is the value on the back end? We always pay out of public money for all of our campaigns, for the ballots, for everything that happens. They're publicly funded. $3 or $4 million, whatever that goes to, however that comes out to help all of our 36 counties make sure they have everything they need, training, education. What is the value on the back end? That's why it's such a critical question. If we go to it, let's go to it and commit to it, regardless of the cost, because the value to our democracy is that much greater.
And I'll only add, I was going to say that as well. And I will add the 4-year runway that we're talking about, right? To provide, we have the ballot measure, and then it wouldn't be implemented until 2028, which allows for the education, which allows for having the understanding as to what exactly, how the process works. So that's why it is the longest in the history of ranked choice voting, is having the 4-year runway. And also over 50 jurisdictions have utilized this, and it has not been repealed, as mentioned, in over a decade. So in over a decade as this has happened. Actual fact.
You're discussing ranked choice voting, instant runoff voting, STV are all same type of systems. So can I answer to the cost then?
Yeah, please.
So then again, you have a lot of government people telling you government things, and then you have reality things and like what actual data happens. Okay. So in Alaska, they put it on the ballot saying it was going to cost $150,000 for voter education. Okay. For ranked choice voting. So this is government telling the voters in Alaska how much they said they were going to spend on voter education. They blew that budget by 2,000%. So they spent $3.1 million on voter education. Okay, the entire administration of elections in Alaska from 2010 to 2020, and nobody on this one in here is going to have this data because they didn't actually do the research. Which is, just because you didn't do the research doesn't mean that you're wrong. Not wrong. It just means that you're wrong and you don't know that you're wrong. That's not my fault. Okay, so in Alaska, from 2010 to 2020. Voter educator, the entire administration of elections, every single year, what the state spent on elections was $3.3 million. Okay. In 2022, using ranked choice voting for the first time, they spent $11.1 million, which was 328% more expensive than every election from 2010 to 2020. This data is directly from the Division of Elections, directly from the Lieutenant Governor's office. So unless they can provide any form of data trying to prove that ranked choice voting is actually cheaper, which they can't, then I would say that it's probably not.
Thank you. This question I'm going to ask is, I had gotten this question from people with PDX Real. I had gotten this today when I was walking through. I have 2 people stop me and say, please ask this question. I think we should start here. Representative Solomon, I kind of thought this might be this question for you, but you guys kind of decide. And then we'll go to the other side if they have any comments about it. Why are legislative elections not included in the statewide ranked choice voting? If you want.
Thank you. And in my opinion, I wish it was included because, again, you provide this opportunity to where folks can go and hit the streets, talk to folks, give them an opportunity for choice. And if that is what I wish that legislators were included, but why they weren't was specific. We heard from the county electors, the county clerks, and they specifically asked for us not to. Now, again, this is incremental steps. This is the 4-year runway, and this could potentially get into that direction, right? But the county clerks asked for that not to happen, and so it was not included. Now, again, this was a huge roundtable of folks that were involved in this, in the discussions. This was League of Women Voters. This was Veterans for Voters. These are a lot of organizations that were involved in looking at the crafting of Measure 117. This wasn't done in a solo room with, whatever the characters you mentioned. These were organizations that are very well known in Oregon that said, we need to make sure what's happening in Oregon is not working, that people feel frustrated. We have an overwhelming larger percentage of folks that are non-affiliated voters. And even when I was hitting the streets and talking to folks about the governor's race, people were like, oh my gosh, I have to pick one or the other. And I just couldn't, I felt frustrated that I couldn't provide more of my voice in that vote. And so this is why, so to your question, it was the county elector, the county clerks that we heard, and we listen to, and that's why the state legislators are not included in that race.
Thank you.
I take that. So this came up with me last week when I interviewed with the Oregon. They had a panel together with us, and the question came up. I didn't know the answer. I really didn't know. I just knew they weren't on it. I think it was Blair who was on that panel. He's been heavily involved in this. He also said it was the clerks. So I went and I checked with some clerks, and they told me, no, we did not ask for this. In fact, we asked for it to be put in. I checked with the lobbyist. The lobbyist said, no, we did not ask for that. We asked for it to be put in. Then I checked with the Rochelle Long, who is the Clackamas County Clerk, who I believe is the Klamath County Clerk, who I believe is the chair, or she's
Incoming president.
the incoming president of the Clerks Association. She said adamantly, no, we wanted it in. And she sent me correspondence where they had edited the bill to add senators and representatives in. And the response from Blair was no, that's not negotiable. Then Jamie and I went back and looked at the 2021 bill, because this ranked choice voting has been introduced before. The 2021 bill had state senators and state representatives in it. So they were removed. And it wasn't the clerks. Well, then I guess I'm talking to the lobbyist, I'm talking to the incoming president, and I'm looking at the email that she has with Blair asking for it to be included. I spoke to another clerk who also checked with two other clerks, and they are saying no. And what I'm being told is that that was a request to be pulled out in order to make sure that it passed, to get enough votes to make this pass. Because it didn't pass in 21 with it. They brought it back, removed the senators, and removed the representatives. Now, I don't know, I haven't confirmed that. That's what I'm being told. I'm trying to confirm it, but I can't confirm from everybody that the clerks wanted them in.
36 of them?
The Association of Clerks, the lobbyist for the Association of Clerks.
Shaking your head.
Are you saying they didn't? I mean, I can show you the email, but
Telling you. You gave me the eye.
No. Well, you passed over the paper.
Yeah, so I do want to clarify one thing that I said earlier about the money in politics. And it is my firm belief that all three of you over there and all four of you are serving Oregon, and you're doing this work, you're doing this advocacy because you believe in this issue. From my own origin story, I was a big ranked choice voting advocate for years. And that's one of the reasons that I'm such a passionate educator on the misinformation around ranked choice voting, because I spread that misinformation pervasively for years. And there is this echo chamber effect where there's this same, stuff repeated. So I'm not saying that legislators who received donations only voted yes because they were paid to do so. Absolutely not. And I don't think this question is alleging that the representatives specifically were like, oh, I want ranked choice voting for everybody else's elections, but not for my own. I don't think it's quite that nefarious. But the fact is that those in power tend to uphold the systems that got them.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for adding that, because, I know that all of you, serving in our legislature are doing this because you want to serve the people of Oregon. And we're grateful for that, and grateful that you would participate in a discussion that, is a little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Spicy?
Wait a second. I just want to bring something up, because I think I'm right to say that this was brought to the legislature in 2021 and it didn't have the votes. So is it possible that the senators were removed from RCV so that the majority was passing it.
So I was in some of the early conversations with the then speaker. As Charlie pointed out, he's no longer the speaker. And the intention was to have it all the way, all the state offices, not just the statewide offices, but senators and representatives. And the clerks, I believe, public testimony from the clerks was that they posed it, generally speaking, not just that portion, but across the board. And it's because it is unknown to them. It's going to be more work. It's complicated for them, right? It makes their lives harder in the short term until everybody gets used to it. And that was the reasoning for having fewer races be part of the initial effort. Assuming it all goes smoothly, I would suspect within 6 or 8 years, all the rest of the elections will also be ranked choice. But the clerks wanted an opportunity to learn how to do it and to set the systems up. And they wanted it not to be all of the votes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's a good segue to this next question. People are concerned about how quickly we get results in our elections, whether or not this is a system that's going to be straightforward, easy to understand, effective. So will we get same-day results? And does RCV maintain local control of counting ballots in the precinct? How are the votes calculated? We've let this side go first a lot, so I'll let you take that over there.
So, briefly, ranked choice voting, you rank the candidates first choice, second choice, third choice, and so on. It's counted in a series of elimination rounds. And in each round, you eliminate the candidate that got the least number of first choice votes. And if possible, you transfer those votes to the voter's next choice. So the takeaway there is massive. Not all the rankings ever get counted. So most voters' rankings in most elections will actually be completely ignored. And as we're counting the ballots, there's no way for Multnomah County, let's say it's a state election, for Multnomah County to know the order of elimination and know which rankings are going to be relevant until you centralize all of the ballot data. And that is fundamentally different from how elections are tallied now. Right now, boxes come in, there's a physical tally on the side of each box of what is the vote total from this box of ballots. And that allows election officials to check their work as they go. With ranked choice voting, since you don't actually know which data is relevant and which data will be ignored, centralization is required. And this is right there in the election standards that our election certifiers use. It's something that's been denied over and over by the ranked choice voting lobby. But it's really important because it's something that's encoded in Oregon state law. Oregon law strongly requires local tabulation of ballots at the county level by our county clerks, and it requires local reporting of the results by precinct. And that is fundamentally impossible with ranked choice voting. So the bill was written, I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, but I know ranked choice requires centralized tabulation, and so as written, the bill was illegal. So I sent an email to every single legislator with a fact sheet, and sure enough, at the House committee meeting, somebody put forward an amendment to strike the section of Oregon law that requires local tabulation, and that's what Measure 117 does.
So we were talking about timing too on that. And so in Alaska, only had 260,000 voters in 2022. We were the last state in the country for election results. And so that's because of centralized counting, because you cannot do precinct level counting. It's the largest state in the country, yes, but if normally you'd be able to give election results day of, Florida can give you, they have millions of voters. They can give you elections. Ours took 3 weeks to get election results because of ranked choice voting. Is that really, you guys want to wait 3 weeks to get your results for your elections? Yeah, and so that also led to Alaska having the lowest voter turnout in the entire history of our state in 2022. Okay, that's a feature of ranked choice voting. And so in Utah, also experiments with ranked choice voting, 10% drop election from one election to the next after implementing ranked choice voting. San Francisco's used it for 20 plus years, and their turnout from 1800s to 2002 was 55%. From 2004 forward, it's only 50%. So on average, 5% lower after implementing ranked choice voting. So there's absolutely no proof at all that this is going to help turnout. It's not going to make it easy to tabulate for local election officials. We were actually at an event last night that said that there's no way to manage this accordingly. And I talked about the different election software that Oregon uses. In Alaska, we had the same election software. And it still took 3 weeks to get 260,000 votes down and tabulated. That's insane. So it could take months, could take a month or longer. And then there's no auditability. You cannot audit it. You cannot hand count it or hand audit it. So that's important.
Real quick, she mentioned that Measure 117 strikes that part of law that says you have to count by precinct in order to make it compliant. What that means is Benton County has been in violation of state law because they've been using ranked choice voting for several years now. And speaking of Benton County, I went to look at their precinct level results for the first election they had go past round one. And it was in November 2022. They did not publish the precinct results. I had somebody from the county call, and the clerks were great. They published the results. They showed the tally for round one only because that's all you can do. You can't report beyond round one. And they're pretty straight up about it. You can't do it.
This goes along with what we're talking about here. How do you, actually, I wanted to say, whenever you said, how do you guys feel about waiting 3 weeks? We were already waiting 3 weeks. How do you audit the results of ranked choice voting?
Are we not going to get to answer that?
No, please. Do you want to do that first? Okay, excuse me. Please don't answer. It wasn't intentional. It's been a long night.
That's okay.
Spicy.
I wanted to just start with the point that you actually just made. You might all recall a couple elections ago, Clackamas County not getting its results out for almost a month and a half.
Yes.
Anybody? You know Clackamas County people here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Had nothing to do with ranked choice voting. Elections sometimes take a long time to tabulate, depending on how things go at the clerk's office, depending on how things go in the printer's office. There's nothing inherent about ranked choice voting that's going to make it take extraordinarily longer. Yes, it will be a slightly longer process. And yes, you may not get results night of. But that's relatively unusual in any case. I'm going to let Charlie cover the other half.
Thank you. So again, the timeline is relative to what we're used to. All the ballots are still going to be scanned in at the county level. All the information is still going to be sent to the Secretary of State's office, just like it is now. The votes that we have in Lane County, they get scanned in, they get reported locally, but it's the Secretary of State that aggregates it. There's no difference with scanning it and sending it to be aggregated. Now, if we have a scenario like with Clackamas, if we have one county that is late as having issues, it might cause some delays in the system. But we're still going to be able to get the results. And the results are easy to follow. I've got printouts for what Alaska looks like and what Maine looks like. And it's really easy to follow round one and round two to see how many votes you get and to see who gets transferred what votes. It is different, is not complex. And as much as folks that are against it are saying that this is complex and, what I would say is hyperbole in a lot of the scenarios, it's just different. It's just resetting your expectations, resetting your definitions of what you want to talk about with majority. We can go through that if there's a question about really what the definition of re-looking at what majority is. but it's just a little bit different. And it's resetting your expectations so that you're not sitting by your phone, particularly if you're a candidate and waiting to see your own results, hitting that refresh as often as you can. It's just going to take a little bit longer, but all the other 50 jurisdictions that do it, a lot of them get the same results within a day. It is not that much more complex. We have AI that can write you a PhD thesis.
Yeah.
They can simply tabulate all this.
Okay. I think we should. Do you really want to say something? Okay. All right.
So I'll agree. This isn't rocket science. Okay. I wrote software for a living. I know how I would write an algorithm that, the program to do this. The point is that it reduces transparency in our elections. Right now, I can go in to Marion County, open a door, go to a bin that has a precinct, and we can count the votes in that precinct by hand, easy. And I can tally results at a precinct level and at a county level. We will not be able to do that anymore with ranked choice voting. All the cast vote records, which means the individual ballot data, not the summary, but the individual ballot data has to be sent to a central location. And all of those ballots have to be counted at one time together to come up with the results.
No, can you, because I'm hearing no over here. So
Getting
can
that
you
right
just
out
say-
of the, and that's the election scientist here, but I'm getting that from the ranked choice voting.
So, real quick, so San Francisco, Oakland have used ranked choice voting longer than anyone. So anyone over here trying to say that they know, like they're talking about a rollout method of 4 years, and yet they're trying to tell you how everything's going to get done. I'm sorry, that's just like they don't know how it's going to get done because they haven't decided how it's going to be done because they have 4 years to figure it out. Okay, so that's in Oakland, who's actually used it. They have a tabulation issue. This last 2022, they ran their tabulation grid incorrectly. Okay, and so it could be audited. They could have just went back and hand counted it, and that was actually ordered to do so. You know what they never did? They never went back and hand counted it because they said it's pretty much impossible to do so. Okay, they had to rerun their tabulation grid because Faribault reached out to the division in Oakland and told them that they ran their tabulation grid incorrectly. So the Oakland division notified the school board there. They awarded a winner in the school board, and they were notified that they ran their tabulation grid incorrectly. And they went back and redid their tabulation because Faribault, who I mentioned earlier, who donates tons of money from all these out-of-state groups, reached out to them and said, no, you ran your tabulation grid wrong, Oakland. Here's the settings you need to put in your machines. They went back and redid that, and they awarded a new winner. Then 6 months later, through court, actually determined who actually won the election. So on top of all the
which one won?
The second one, the one that Faribault wanted to win.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then she's got some great points on this type there.
Yeah. So, this Oakland thing was absolutely unprecedented. It was the first time. Well, it was the second time after New York City. So in 2021, New York City started releasing the ranked choice voting results and got partway through the rounds. And a candidate was like, hey, my exit polling showed that this is totally off in just the number of voters. And they realized that nobody had noticed, but they had accidentally added 135,000 test ballots to the official count. And the New York City Board of Elections had recorded those as if they were real ballots. Follow that, the next year, another ranked choice voting election, every single ranked choice election in Alameda County, which is the Oakland area and the Bay Area, had done the steps of ranked choice voting in the wrong order. And the reason that neither of these mistakes were counted or were caught is because you can't check your work as you go. Human error is natural. Elections are complicated. It's really important that election officials can check their work as they go. Because this Oakland bombshell was front page news in San Francisco on basically the 1 year anniversary of our January 6th insurrection. This is not something that we can afford to compromise on. Whether or not you think our elections are at risk or election integrity is at risk, maintaining our public confidence in our elections is absolutely fundamental. And compromising on that not only puts our elections at risk, it puts our politicians at risk, it puts our people at risk, and it puts our country at risk. So it's not something we have to compromise on, and it's not something that is compromised on by any other voting method that's being proposed. So we advocate for star voting at the Equal Vote Coalition. With star voting, you can show your preferences, whether or not your favorite can win. Your vote automatically goes to the finalist you prefer. It ensures a majority preferred winner between those top two finalists. And you only have to vote once in November. So if any of that sounds familiar, it's essentially invented to do what ranked choice voting set out and promised to do, but to do it simpler, to do it with basic addition, to do it transparently, and to do it more accurately. And it's fully precinct summable because it's just addition. It counts all the ballot data. And it's not my way or the highway. There are a handful of great voting methods out there that count all the ballot data on the ballots. And shockingly, all of those are substantially more accurate representative than ranked choice voting as it's being proposed. So you can have ranked ballots and count all the rankings. That's something called rank robin. We endorse that too. You can have a traditional looking ballot, and that's called approval voting. So there are great ways to solve these problems. They are real problems, but we owe it to voters to get it right.
I'm going to have the final word on this particular piece by Senator Sullivan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I would say a couple of things I want to touch on. Specifically, San Francisco was mentioned, and I want to mention that Black, Latino, and Asian American voters were more likely to fully rank their ballots, according to a California research. Errors on ranked choice ballots revealed no significant differences when comparing racial and ethnic groups, according to a 2020 study. So I want to mention that. I also want to mention the part about the ballots' integrity. So the ballots retain and stay with our local counties. They are there for to be checked and to go through any audit process. I want to mention that in Oakland, California, a county registrar used the wrong settings for their ranked choice voting tabulation. Their tabulator is from Dominion Voting Systems, and the registrar mistakenly selected a setting that was incompatible with the city's rules for RCV elections. Now, the error was discovered not by the county. It was discovered by an RCV advocates who analyzed ranked choice data, and they communicated directly to the county registrar, who investigated the concern and issued their own press release being transparent about the error and the next steps. And in contrast, when a similar error occurred at a non-ranked choice voting location in New Jersey, their error took much longer to catch because non-RCV elections tend to be less transparent about the election data. As Representative Conrad said, that the ability to see this data there in the county and such. And so I wanted to mention those specific comments made specifically about San Francisco and Oakland.
You did the site your study.
Yes.
Who did your study? Was it fair vote? Was it fair vote? I'm asking, yeah. So the fair vote implemented, they went into Oakland and told them the fair vote, and when I told you that had millions of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars donated to push ranked choice voting, that group told Oakland that they ran their tabulation grid incorrectly. And you're telling me that there's not another group that on the plurality side that has hundreds of millions of dollars to monitor ranked choice voting?
I received this from a site for politics and governance. It's an open access journal. It's about the demographic disparities using ranked choice voting, ranking difficulty, undervoting, and the 2020 Democratic primary.
Who did the study? So my study that I said.
It says the Department, excuse me, can I finish? Department of Political Science, the University of Iowa.
So University of San Francisco in 2011, that's the study, you can go look it up, says that Latinos, Pacific Islanders, and elderly are far more likely to vote for just one person. That's a study, and that's where you can find it. Just say.
I believe the study that you're thinking of, Bill, is that that voters who are lower income, people of color and who don't speak English as a first language, it's not that they're more likely to only vote for one candidate. It's that they're more likely to have their ballot unable to be counted because of a voter error. And those groups are also more likely to have their ballot exhausted, which means that it can't transfer and doesn't make it to the deciding round. But people do like showing their preferences. And so I believe what you're saying.
Okay, hang on. Do you really want
Just real quick.
you have
Yeah, there are many other studies that show the opposite. Look at New York City, differences based on income. Look at Minnesota based on income and education level. So for every study that says, hey, there's no disparate impact, there's another study or two or three that say there is a disparate impact.
you know what? So, okay, Sarah, hold on. So we are at 8:35, and I want to be respectful of time. So, I had a few more questions, but we got through like 9. So, I mean, I think we did. Yeah, it's good. So, how do you guys feel about? It's a wild card round. So, closing remarks from each person. 1 minute each. And by the way, and before you do that, while you guys are just thinking about that, how many of you have more of an opinion one way or the other after being here tonight?
Mine didn't change.
It's like, how many people have an opinion generally about this? Okay. How many people are lost? You're lost. You're lost. Okay. We're going to talk to you after. I won't do it now. Okay. Would you guys be willing to give them 2 minutes each?
Yes.
Yes.
12.
Yes.
9.
Whoever said, do we get to talk? Not you, Mark.
I don't mind having stays.
I don't want to put anybody in a position that needs to get home and feed dogs or kids or help their spouse do something. Okay. We're going to give you 2 minutes. 2 each, obviously. Would you like to go first? I'll let you guys manage it yourselves.
So you've heard a lot of facts tonight. I would encourage you to put some effort into research. There's a lot of misinformation that's being floated around on things like this. On a lot of elections, actually. This is ranked choice voting is simply an opportunity for you to be able to vote for the person you want to vote for, not to be forced to vote for the lesser of two evils, which is, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from constituents that they feel like they're having to vote for the lesser of two evils, particularly in primaries. This is an opportunity to actually vote for the person you want to vote for, and then to have your backup vote actually matter. All this discussion of exhausted votes, if you vote for a third party in our current system, your vote is immediately exhausted. It was exhausted when you checked that ballot because it has no effect on the election whatsoever. So this concept that people will have exhausted ballots, yeah, if there's 9 candidates and it goes through that many levels, and your 3 happen to be the 3 bottom ones, yes, your ballot will eventually be exhausted. But other than that, your vote will count more often than it does in this current system. You've got to understand that, because that's, and I want to make one other point that I thought was rather insulting to the voters. I do believe most 78-year-olds can figure this out. I do believe that most people in America can figure this out, and specifically people here in Oregon.
You're gonna go back and forth through,
Yeah, fine. What do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. How about one of you goes, and then we'll flip it back.
Most, but not all. And the data shows that. There are people who aren't figuring this out. And in Oregon, we're doing mail-in ballots. What feedback do you get that says, hey, you filled your ballot out incorrectly? None. We won't know. People will not know if they filled it out right. There is no feedback. That's true. So, hey, we don't have a perfect system, right? It's not true. We've been polarized, I think, since the beginning of our republic. At least we don't, have pistol duels anymore. Okay, maybe it's gotten a little better. But we have built the freest, the strongest, the most diverse country in the world off this flawed system. I'm not ready to toss it out yet. Okay. I'd say Oregon is still reeling from another failed social experiment, ballot measure 110. And we saw deep pockets, out-of-state interests fund an extravagant and deceptive marketing campaign to convince voters that recriminalizing drugs without these safeguards in place was a good idea. It went wrong. It's going to take us years to recover. I believe we're seeing the same thing with Measure 117. We've got out-of-state actors flooding Oregon and other states with millions to convince us that this is a good idea. And as we discussed, and I encourage you, like they said, look at the evidence, look at the data. I will share data with you, as I'm sure they should too. The evidence is at best mixed on the value of RCV, and at worst, it actually disenfranchises voters that we mostly want, that we desperately want engaged in the process. And this is why one of my friends calls Measure 117 the Measure 110 of election reforms. I really urge you to vote.
Thank you again for this opportunity to be here tonight for this spicy conversation. I just want to mention some high points about the better representation. Ranked choice voting leads a more reflective outcomes and improves representation. In cities that have adopted ranked choice voting, women and candidates of color have won 24% more races compared to non-ranked choice voting races. Voters prefer it. Over 60% of Oregonians support ranked choice voting, and in cities and states where it has been adopted, 73% of voters who have used it prefer ranked choice voting to our current system. So Oregon must take the next step as a leader in electoral reform to empower voters. The core principle of conservative values is about freedom of choice. And this is what provides every Oregonian the opportunity to have their voice be heard with their vote. In places that have adopted ranked choice voting, voters have not only understand it, but they overwhelmingly prefer it. Ranked choice voting is a win for voters, for candidates, and for the foundation of our democracy. And again, thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight with you all.
I'll go next. So there are valid studies that come out of Fair Vote. I was shocked to learn it too, but one of the studies is around more diverse representation under ranked choice voting, and that is one of the talking points that's brought up over and over again. And there is some decent data about it. When you dig into the studies, the citations get a little murky. But what's clear is that voters in general elections elect more women and people of color. And preference voting allows you to skip the primary and just vote once in November. So that's not something that we're chalking up to ranked choice voting. That's something we're chalking up to having a bigger electorate when we actually go to vote. It's also something that's a trend that's happening around the country in general. So in Oregon, and especially in the more progressive leaning cities that are adopting ranked choice voting first, they're already electing more women and more people of color because as a country, we're making strides on that. So one thing that's interesting here is, even after I was like, oh, ranked choice voting is not everything it was sold as, I'm starting to have concerns. I was in a position of thinking, it's still better than what we've got now though, right? And that's what I hear over and over from ranked choice voting advocates who start to learn about the issues and they're like, well, but it's still better than what we've got now, right? And it took me a couple of years deep in this work to come around and to decide that actually, no, it's not better than what we have now. There are a lot of things with our current elections that we take for granted. It's simple. It's transparent. It's fair. We have one person, one vote. And even though the voting method can play favorites, it can be polarizing, there are a number of problems. Ranked choice voting doesn't actually solve the problems it sets out to. It still has vote splitting and spoiler effect. It happened in the first statewide election in Alaska. Also, in that election, we saw that it's not safe to rank your first choice first. Voters who honestly rank their first choice first, if there's multiple competitive candidates, that can backfire. So it doesn't solve the problem it sets out to do, and it introduces new problems along the way.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
here,
Sarah.
just
Sarah.
one
Sarah.
it's that it can do more harm than good.
All right.
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you. So a couple things. I'll start off with data. You've heard numbers from both sides of this, and that's because it's in 50 jurisdictions. It's been going on for a long time. A lot of information. Get into the data as much as you want to, because I'll tell you that a lot of the numbers you've heard have just been numbers out of context and without historical meaning. So really get into the data and look at it for yourself and figure out, does this meet your system? And just a couple things that came up. New York came up, and I'll tell you that from this, what I'm looking at is, and exit polls, number of people that are leaving that or say that they understand RCV extremely well, 44%. 34% say very. Only 4% say not well at all. And understanding of RCV ballot instructions, again, from New York, very simple, 70%. 24% say, somewhat simple, and 1% say very difficult. So these are exit polls. These are people that just fill out the ballots. Go look at this data and this information and see if this resonates with you. The other thing that came up is with New York is that 15% of the people in a 5 mayoral race chose one person. Yeah. 45% chose 5 people. 45% ranked all 5 candidates. Numbers matter, and go look at that. The last thing that I'll talk about is with, in Alaska, the Patola race. It is given as a case study for why this fails. This is a case study of why it matters and why it's good. 4 people, a Libertarian, 2 Republicans, a Democrat. Libertarian was the first one that got eliminated. His votes got transferred, and 1,000 of them went to Patola, who's the Democrat. 1,000 people had a Libertarian 1, a Democrat 2. Begich was the third one, or the second one that got eliminated. He had a number of votes that went to the other Republican, but he also had 7,477 that went to Democrat. Split ballots matter, and this is what ranked choice voting does. You can choose.
Wow. That was perfect on time. Yeah, we were early. Yeah, it's gold star.
All right, so we'll start with Alaska. All right, so he cited the November general election, which had the lowest voter turnout in the entire history of the entire state. Okay, so we also had a 32% turnout in the primary that year. Our turnout this year was 16%. So we lost 50% turnout in a single year because people stopped showing up because of the election system in Alaska. In the special general, 112,000 Republicans voted for Republican in 2022. 75,000 people voted for a Democrat. 36,000 vote advantage for Republicans, and yet the Democrat won the election. That's special general election, not the November election that he's talking about. So DC Democrats sued to block ranked choice voting. Nevada Democrats are against ranked choice voting. The Washington State Secretary of State is against ranked choice voting. Gavin Newsom vetoed ranked choice voting in California. Governor Jerry Brown in California, against ranked choice voting. Same people who funded Measure 110 are funding ranked choice voting in Alaska. He's talking about sitting there, dark money. He doesn't know anything about dark money. I fought dark money until Alaska Supreme Court beat them. I'm beating them right now. I'm going to beat them in November. Talking about $4.5 million against me. I'm just some regular citizen in Alaska. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's fun? No, it's not. It's completely against the Constitution. It's completely wrong. No one should have to do what I had to do. Okay, so my thing is that ranked choice voting hurts English as second language voters. It hurts our elderly voters. It hurts our disabled voters. It hurts low information voters. It hurts low education voters. It hurts low income voters, third party candidates, and third party voters. All right. And I'm going to follow up with actual real data. I actually went around and collected 42,000 signatures in the state of Alaska. I personally wrote the repeal of ranked choice voting and led it to the ballot with the most signatures by an individual with over 2,000 signatures. I traveled all over the state. I actually did all the verification and I submitted the repeal to the state of Alaska. In that process, I met 3 people that in particular left an impression. The person who I wrote the repeal for, which is my grandfather, so he would disagree with Representative Gamba up there. He used to run a multi-million-dollar construction company. He didn't understand his ballot, which is why I wrote the repeal of ranked choice voting. A 19-year-old disabled girl who said that she was so confused by the ballot for the first time voting that she cried in the voting room. And then a Vietnam veteran said they were never going to vote again because of ranked choice voting. And the United States of America is a republic, not a democracy.